What up, friends? It's justified if the stars say it. And today we're going to be reviewing the newest mixtape by FKA Twigs, CAPRISONGS. This is the newest project by the experimental and art pop artist FKA Twigs. Twigs has been pretty popular in the music scene recently, finding a niche in her Björk-esque brand of glitchy and off-kilter pop music. To me, it kind of feels like she's on the cusp of being both experimental and accessible, but in a way that almost makes some parts of her sound feel a bit incomplete. That said, I respect her artistry, of course, and her previous album, Magdalene, really had some nice aesthetics and emotion to it. This project, on the other hand, though, sees her embracing her mainstream half even further. While this isn't a bad mixtape per se, it does highlight a lot of the things that I don't care for about Twigs as well. The start of the mixtape is pretty strong, with the introduction to Ride the Dragon being quirky and intimate. This is before it delves into a sultry groove thanks to the smooth bass, delicate vocals, and fun sample interactions. The main beat has a fantasy-style vibe that's pretty fun and quirky, and the second verse especially has some really interesting flows to it. The pre-chorus and chorus are whimsical and lively, and also have some pretty interesting switch-ups in the synth and samples, alongside some pretty distinct vocal manipulation too. Despite what it looks like at first, it's a pretty dynamic track that I really like. Honda, on the other hand, goes in the complete opposite direction as we are now entering banger territory. The deep bass and the church choir of the damned in the background are really fun, and Twigs really knows how to fit in between them. Pasalu's guest vocals fit in right at home here, and I think the interactions that the two have with each other add a lot of charisma to this song overall. Verse 3 really shows this in full effect, and I like the subtle keys that come in after the fact too. They add a darkly elegant vibe to some fun moments featuring love, motorways, and just general British culture. The Björk vibes really come through in Meta Angel, featuring a sort of a cappella themed instrumental alongside some swelling strings and grand vocal performances. The fluttery chorus and the plucking of the strings have a pretty wistful aesthetic, and I really like the sort of hyper-pop-esque vocals that come in the post-chorus as well. It's a great showcase of her range alongside a bunch of different styles that can still come together to form a cohesive track. I'm also enjoying the engaging lyrical themes about having to burn down your old self in order to rise again to create something new and better. Tears in the Club is the first instance of quite a few songs on this mixtape where I like some elements of the track, but not all of them. Twigs' first verse is great and the flows are really catchy, however, I really think the main beat kind of falters in comparison. Its simplistic dance nature doesn't really do a lot for the track, to be honest, and it feels kind of static and hollow in comparison to the warmness of her vocals. However, I do really love that post-chorus feeling very groovy and playful. Lyrically, it's not doing anything too new, it's mostly just about love and relationships. However, I do think the addition of the Weeknd's performances sort of enhance their chemistry together and make the song work better than were it without him. Oh My Love is similar to the last one, where I like some elements, but not all of them. It can feel a bit repetitive in its lyrics and sort of par for the course instrumentally at times. However, I do also think that Twigs' delivery is pretty fun in the pre-chorus as she laments over unrequited love. I'm also really enjoying the addition of the background vocals that come in the latter half of the song. However, the track overall just kind of stays in one place and doesn't have a lot of meaningful changes as it progresses. However, one of the next tracks I want to talk about, Lightbeamers, is definitely one of the highlights on this project. The elegant music box elements here really help it stand out from the more dancehall-oriented direction that a lot of the songs on the latter half of this mixtape take. The instrumental is simple yet layered, and a lot of her flows are very playful over this very elegant beat. The lyrics are also a lot more interesting too, going for a more introspective approach about learning to love all the things about you that make you different. Twigs' vocals are pretty dynamic at times, and I really like how the instrumental kind of swirls around them as the track progresses too. It's essentially a sort of low-key self-love anthem that I can get behind. Poppy Bones, on the other hand, is probably my least favorite track on here. It is literally just your standard dancehall tune with a typical rhythm and horn segments. Out of all the tracks on this mixtape, this one feels like it lacks Twigs' style the most, feeling very uninspired at times and just boring. There are some glitchy vocal effects that translate some of her sound into the mix, however, they really can't help how bland and played out a lot of this feels. Lyrically, it is a party anthem, which does fit this song in particular. However, I don't know if this song's sound or its lyrics fit this mixtape's aesthetic overall. Careless, though, is definitely among the more interesting songs on the second half. The chill alternative R&B vibes of the beat and guitar are really elegant, and they fit the sort of lovesick ballad that is being portrayed here. Her vocals especially have this very melancholic groove that helps set the scene nicely. The chorus especially is simple, but also very effective in how it's delivered, and I really loved hearing all of her different vocal inflections on this track. It's a real treat, and having Daniel Caesar come on here also heightens the song emotionally too, I think. Getting both angles coming in, it really just enhances the mood of the song. I think bringing him on also does a great job in highlighting the emotional intimacy of the track too. Minds of Men is probably my favorite song on this thing, actually. Again, this track does have a very Björk-esque sound, but her vocals on this one, man, they're probably some of the best on this entire project. The skeletal instrumental really highlights the theatric vocal delivery on this track. However, I also really like the sort of soft and empathetic delivery on the chorus. The simple piano and samples are very elegant and match her flows, evolving into a light dance of harmonies and sound effects. I also really appreciate the lyrical sentiment of encouraging men to be emotional and ask for help, not having to feel hard like the tough guy all the time. It sort of dismantles this toxic stereotype that men have to be stoic and unfeeling. It's a really effective way to get that done. Despite the second half of this mixtape being especially rocky compared to the first, I do want to bring attention to the closing track, Thank You Song. I especially love the lyrics on this track, feeling very vulnerable, and I also really appreciate the sentiment of her fans kind of cheering her on and letting her unapologetically be herself. It shows her kind of breaking out of a depression, and having the vocals and instrumental feel isolated during the verses, yet swelling during the chorus adds to this lyrical sentiment really effectively. It also calls back to the sort of glitchy piano-driven moment on the early leg of the project, kind of bringing it full circle in a way. Now overall, I'm kind of torn on this mixtape. Now I wasn't the biggest fan of Twigs to begin with, despite appreciating what she was putting down, like I said at the beginning. However, this mixtape strips away a lot of what I did like about Twigs' music in exchange for something that is very rudimentary and mainstream. I didn't talk about quite a few tracks on this mixtape because there wasn't much to talk about. They had elements of her art pop aesthetic that I liked over beats that were quite frankly boring. Now that's kind of the problem that I have with a lot of her work, but it's just more obvious here. She's treading a middle ground where she has fairly experimental samples and vocals over beats that sound like they could be on a top 40 hit. I really do wish that she would commit more to her experimental sounds and create beats that are lush and layered instead of the more static and rigid ones that she tends to go with. The mixtape is also kind of long for the simpler sound that it has, and there were quite a few interludes on this mixtape as well that kind of took me out of the experience and hurt the replayability. However, there are also quite a few elegant moments on here as well, and I really like what she does with the vocals and samples. The lyrics throughout this project, while not always the most groundbreaking thing, also tended to be very vulnerable, passionate, and clever too. All in all, with CAPRISONGS even more so than her previous project, I tended to like the parts individually more than the sum of them put together. I'm feeling a light 6 on CAPRISONGS. But of course we do have to talk about album covers on this show, and for what it's worth, I do think this project has a pretty good cover. I don't know how I feel about the text on her hood. That's probably the one element that I'm not too keen on. I think if you took that off, it would be really good. You have a great and fun picture of her. It really captures her personality. I feel like it fits the more fun-natured themes of the lyrics too. Kind of fits the sound as well. Nice color combinations here. I think it's just that one element that kind of brings it down a little bit. As always, those are just my thoughts on this mixtape. What did you guys think? Did you actually like this new sound she went in, a bit more accessible, or were you hoping for something a bit more experimental like her previous releases? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell if you're also a Capricorn, like me. And until the next one, farewell.